Good evening. It is January 27th. I welcome you all to the Board of Education first public forum on the budget. We're here tonight to hear from the public in response to the proposed budget that has been put before the Board of Education by our Superintendent, Dr. Freeman, and his administrative staff. We would like to start the evening and give Dr. Freeman just a few minutes to give us a brief overview of what this budget contains, and then the evening is really going to be turned over to all of you. We will ask you, if you would like to speak, to come up to the podium here. There's a mic that is connected to the TV so that people who are watching this later can hear. We ask you to, if you have a lot to say, perhaps try to limit it to 2 or 3 minutes. We do want to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. You are more than welcome to come up more than once, right? So if you want to come up and then you have something to say and we've given other people a chance, please feel free. We are here to listen. And we will take the time to listen. We are going to ask if you are comfortable to give your name and address. It does allow for minute taking. That is not required to speak. It is simply a request. So I am going to turn this over right now to Dr. Freeman. He can provide us with kind of an introduction to the evening. And then again, we will turn it over to all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Ballas-Tracy. This budget and this presentation was originally presented at a Board of Education regular meeting on January 13th. For the purposes of our conversation tonight, I will not repeat that presentation, but I will hit some of the larger pieces. As we begin any budget build, we remind the board and we remind the community that our budgets grow every year from our school mission and our vision, from annual priorities that the Board of Education sets for us, and from annual initiatives, specific work that we do each year. I have been very, very proud to be part of a leadership team that has maintained a consistent vision, mission, and set of priorities that focus on emotional wellness, high-quality professional environment for our teachers that together create a rigorous and an exciting educational environment in every classroom for every student every day. From that work, we move to budget assumptions. Every year that we build the budget, we begin by looking at building that healthy school environment, focusing on instruction, and recognizing that before we ask this community to come forward with new resources, that we look carefully at how we use the resources that exist. Finally, a school budget every year is built on enrollment. We build for the students, we program for the students who we anticipate to be in the classrooms in front of us. As we move from this school year to next school year, we're projecting an enrollment decline of approximately 73 students. Visually, our actual enrollment is signified here by the green line. We see that we are down 353 students over the last 7 or 8 years in the school district. We are experiencing enrollment declines in the Guilford community. The red line is the projection from a professional demographic study that we commissioned some 10 years ago. The red line actually is a very accurate representation of enrollment in other suburban communities, particularly up and down the shoreline. So while Guilford is seeing enrollment declines, we're not seeing the kind of declining enrollment that we do see in other communities. This budget that we request this year is the single largest investment that the town of Guilford will make. Every year, the investment in public education is the single largest investment that this community makes. This year, I am proposing a draft budget to the Board of Education that begins at $61,845,459. That's an increase of approximately $1.3 million over what we have in this year's current budget. It's an increase of 2.14%. To put that in some historical perspective, it's the lowest request to come forward in a draft budget from the leadership team to the Board of Education in my time in Guilford Public Schools. You'll see that there was a time where we were anticipating increases that were in the neighborhood of 3 and 3.5%. We don't anticipate that in school budgets any longer. School budgets that come in right around the 2% increase are considered significant and generous across the state. There are other communities that have had their schools working on 0% increases year over year over year. And Guilford has never done that. Guilford has continued to invest in our schools, and that is something that we should be proud of. All that said, however, we recognize as a school leadership team that our responsibility is to the community as well as to the students in our schools. We work every year to create a responsible budget. We create a budget every year that we believe this community could and should support, and therefore we focus on making sure that our requests are reasonable, logical, sound, and in fact, we work every year to begin by looking at efficiencies. So this year's budget presentation is different than in past years because in this year's budget presentation, I come forward to the board and to the community suggesting staffing decreases. Significant staffing decreases unlike those that I have proposed in previous years. We also take great pride in the medical work that's been done. The medical benefits, which represent a significant portion of our budget every year focuses on the people in our schools. 85% of the school district's budget is taken up by salaries and associated benefits for our employees. The medical benefit spending this year is below what it was in school year 14-15, but our employees are receiving the same level of benefits. We have not reduced coverage. We've changed plan structures. All the employees, myself included, work harder for those benefits now. We carry much more of the paperwork load than before, but by doing that, we have reduced the medical benefit spending, which allows us to put dollars into the classrooms. And I can't say enough how much credit the teachers and the principals deserve because we are frugal, there's no other word for it, in the management of supplies and materials in our classrooms. We don't spend money unnecessarily while we work to make sure that we create vigorous learning environments. To illustrate the medical spending, I'll just point out that this year at $8.9 million, it's a significant investment, but it's $400,000 lower than that same line item was last year. It's below the spending level of 14-15. In addition to working on efficiencies, every year school budgets are driven by unavoidable non-discretionary cost increases. So while we worked very hard to keep salary and medical costs contained and controlled this year, it's still it's the largest expenditure we make. 85% of our budget goes to salaries and benefits. We hire talented, experienced teachers into the district. This year, the salary increase after staffing reductions still comes in at $868,000. And tuition increases, that is tuition that we spend for students with special needs who need special instruction or special care outside of what we can offer in Guilford Public Schools. That line item this year is increasing by approximately $250,000. Those two costs alone represent a $1.1 million increase, and you'll remember that the entire budget is only going up by approximately $1.3 million. The non-discretionary cost drivers represent the lion's share of the increases in this year's budget. I won't spend a lot of time on this other than to show that tuition line that increases by $250,000. The red line is our actual spend on tuition. The blue line is our budgeted projections for spending around those tuitions for students with special needs that we need to meet by enlisting support outside of the Guilford Public Schools. That is the most volatile line that any school district has in the budget. It is very difficult to predict, and every year it creates pressures on our budget that we need to meet. Now, we have addressed that. You can see that in school years 10, 11, 11, 12, and 12, 13, we were on an increase that was unsustainable. Over the last several years, by creating more local capacity to educate more of our students here in Guilford Public Schools, where we had previously been placing 42 or 45 students out of district every year, we're currently only needing to place 25 or 27 students out of the district. By keeping more of the students in district, we educate them better in their communities, with their neighbors and with their friends. We eliminate transportation time for those students, and we believe that we have done better at controlling those costs. The budget starts with efficiencies. The budget has to recognize unavoidable non-discretionary increases, and every year the budget also includes thoughtful, intentional investments. Every year we look at how we spend our money, and we look at how we teach in the classrooms, and we think about how we will be better next year. This year's budget includes a number of significant investments, including the expansion of instructional coaching for our classroom teachers, including a focus on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, what is often known as STEM, or what could be described as STEAM if you incorporate the visual arts into that acronym. That is spread across the elementary and middle levels, and a number of small individual stipends that will be built into this budget. To take each of them a little bit in detail, we're excited about the fact that we have built an instructional coaching cohort in this district that we recognize as one of the most effective in the state of Connecticut. By instructional coaching, what we mean certified teachers, master teachers in fact, that we keep on staff who support and help develop the professional skills of every teacher in every classroom. We have built teaching in the areas of literacy and mathematics through grades K through 8 in the school district. In literacy, we've built it through grades K through 6 and K through 8 in mathematics. Every teacher who has the support of an instructional coach becomes a better, more reflective, and more effective teacher. This year, this budget includes the placement of literacy coaches at both Adams and at Guilford High School. The first time that we'll be placing an instructional coach at our high school. It has taken us a decade to build coaching from the earliest grades to the point that we're now introducing coaching at our high school level. I have to say that I think it is one of the singular elements that has contributed to the successes that we see in our school district. And when you think about what makes Guilford teachers special and Guilford classrooms really rich places of learning, it's the opportunity that teachers have to learn from each other and to learn from dedicated professional developers who work with them on the ground during their regular workday in their classrooms with their students. So we're particularly excited about this investment. When I mentioned the STEM investment, what we're talking about are building out maker spaces at each of our 4 elementary schools and extending an existing makerspace currently at Baldwin Middle School. Maker spaces, and in fact what we'll be doing in our elementary schools are taking old outdated computer labs and turning them into hands-on learning centers where students have access to 3D printers, building supplies and materials, cardboard, paper, tape, paste, whatever it takes to use their hands to become three-dimensional in their efforts to solve challenging problems. These spaces in every school are not a class or a curriculum. They don't come with a teacher. They are open spaces that will be available to individual teachers to sign out. So a second grade classroom teacher could take her class into that space to explore a particularly challenging engineering exercise or challenge. An art teacher could bring her students into that space to use the materials that are available there in different ways than materials that are available in her classrooms. They'll be associated with the media centers, but they will be available to the teaching staff throughout every one of our buildings. Additionally, at Adams this year, we're looking to add an additional special to the arts rotation, and in addition to the more traditional tech education class, we'll be offering a more computer coding-based class where students will have the opportunity to learn about writing code, to learn about robotics, to learn about gaming coding, for instance. And we will continue a focus on professional learning in science. This year, for the last year and a half actually, we've worked with the science teachers at Adams, looking at the new next generation science standards and how science instruction needs to look as we move towards these new standards. Next year, we will be moving that focus to the high school. It's particularly exciting that Mr. McDowell, who is the high school department chair, has participated in this last year and a half with the middle school science team, and now he moves in to repeat that experience next year as one of the leads in the professional development with the high school science team. Additionally, this budget includes a doubling of the investment that we set aside this year for an artist in residence at each of the elementary schools, working with the local Guilford art community. This year we've asked to have a local artist spend time in each of our elementary schools, providing extra opportunities to students in that time, but also talking with teachers about how to more intentionally incorporate the visual art standards into our classroom experiences. Next year, we look to double that investment and have a 2-week experience or 2 one-week experiences at every elementary school rather than a 1-week experience. This budget includes some monies for the identification of a middle school athletic director, a teacher who could draw an additional stipend to help oversee all of the athletic events that primarily take place at Adams Middle School, to work in conjunction with Mr. Jarvis, who right now works to oversee all of the athletic programming at both the high school and at Adams. Because of state requirements, we need to identify a chemical hygiene officer. This would be a stipend for a science teacher who would make sure that we are managing, treating, and disposing of any essentially chemical materials in science classes properly and appropriately. And we'll be offering an opportunity for a 10-year employee, a 10-month employee like a teacher or a 10-month administrator, to have some extended opportunity to help coordinate the extended school year or summer school opportunities that we provide. All of those opportunities on this last sheet come together for a total of a $25,000 investment. What this looks like in this budget, and what looks different than it has in past budgets, is when you look at the staffing distribution. As we begin to address multiple years of those enrollment declines of 50 to 70 students year over year, what this budget includes is initially the elimination of 10 teaching positions in the school system. It includes the elimination of 6 language arts positions here at Adams Middle School, where the school is currently still built on a 5-person team model with double language arts blocks, 2 language arts teachers, 1 math, 1 science, 1 social studies teacher. As we move into next year, that 5-person team will be restructured into a 4-person team with equal blocks available to math, science, social studies, and English language arts. That does mean there will be a reduction in contact time from what students are currently seeing in English language arts as a standalone class. It means an increase in contact time in math, science, and social studies. And we will draw the literacy skills of reading and writing across all of those subject areas. So the importance of that coaching position that I already mentioned this year at Adams will be essential, as that coach helps teachers in the other subject areas to draw literacy into their areas, and to help the English teachers make those critical decisions about what will maintain focus next year as we make this schedule change. Additionally, there will be the reduction of 3 elementary classroom teaching positions spread across Lakes and Jones. And there's the elimination of a district-wide interventionist position that currently works across the elementary schools. There is a reinvestment of some of those positions. Not all 10 of those positions will be reinvested into the schools. However, at the high school, there will be an increase. A currently part-time 80% school counselor will be increased to full-time. There will be an increase of 40% of 1 position into the world language department, and there will be an increase of 40% into the math department. Those increases are necessitated not so much by class sizes at the high school, but by the need to be able to schedule to meet the new state graduation requirements. The state now requires students to have a variety of credits in a variety of different areas or buckets, and it requires flexibility in scheduling. Those additional full-time equivalents will be necessary to be able to schedule appropriately to meet those needs. You'll see the 2 coaching positions that I mentioned already, 1 at Adams and 1 at the high school. We're particularly excited about those opportunities. You will see the computer science position at Adams that I mentioned, and there's a small increase in the music position at Leet Elementary School for a music teacher who has been spending more and more of his time working with special education students and their needs, and we want to continue to support that effort. After those changes are made, it is important to understand what our class sizes will be across the school district. This year, our average class size K through 4 is 18. We have 18 students in grades K through 4 on an average. After the elimination of those 4 positions next year, the average class size district-wide K through 4 is projected to be 18. Those changes will allow us to maintain the current class sizes that we have. They're not running up class sizes. The spread is that we see, and it's hard to make, every class will not be 18. Across the elementary schools next year, we project a smallest class of 12 and a largest class of 21, but an average class size of 18 after those changes are made. When we make the change to the staffing here at Adams, we are projecting average class sizes of 20 and 21. We're looking at average class sizes of 19 in the 7th grade and average class sizes of about 22 in the 8th grade after those changes are made. If we failed to make those changes, we would projecting class sizes in the 7th grade of 15 students. That's the level that we project for kindergarten-sized classes. So these changes are necessitated by the earlier slides I showed you when I said that we need to make sure that we're being responsible to the community and providing the most exciting educational opportunities that we can provide for the students in our schools. This budget allows us to fund the additional professional support for teachers and to bring a budget to the community that is still a little higher than it's been in the last 3 or 4 years, but a budget that we believe this full community completely can get behind and support. This budget is the draft that the leadership team delivers to the Board of Education. We delivered it on January 13th. The board is here tonight and tomorrow night to listen to your comments and your feedback before they ultimately decide on the final budget that they, the board, will adopt to move forward to the Board of Finance. And it's the Board of Finance who ultimately moves a budget forward to the entire community to vote upon. So I have mentioned to the Board of Education that there are some areas that they need to look as places of possible increase or places of further decrease in this budget. And I expect that with your input tonight and tomorrow night, the board will be able to have healthy conversations about these possible changes and any others. Ultimately, this will become the board's budget, and we stand ready to support you in any of those changes that you deem necessary. And I know I said it would be short. I'm sorry it wasn't as short as I hoped.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Freeman. So this is now your opportunity to come speak to us. Again, we welcome anyone who chooses to speak to simply walk up to the podium. Please give us your name and address, and then we are ready to listen. So come on up.
Melissa Espinoza, 301 South Union Street. Got my crew. You're tall. Good evening. I am a lifelong Guilford resident, Guilford High School graduate, and parent of 2 children currently in the Guilford school system. But tonight I'm here representing a group of Guilford High School boy swimmers and their families, and ideally with the hope that many of you will join in my vision, many more kids in the future. My son is currently a freshman at Guilford High School, but he found swimming at age 8. The swim culture was new to us as his parents, and my husband and I have been impressed time and time again by all that comes with this sport. We've been humbled at times. We both consider ourselves sports-oriented. We've both worked in the public school systems for years, and we have also coached kids for that many years. But maybe like some of you, we did not know much about the sport of swimming. What we've learned over these years is what an incredible community the swimming one is, from the parents to the coaches to the kids. I can honestly stand here and say that our negative experiences have been close to none. Some think of swim as an individual sport, but I would 100% disagree. I've never seen a team quite like a swim team, and my younger son plays on 3 different sports teams. The support, camaraderie, energy, and healthy competition among these kids is everything we've ever wanted for our kids. And we love that swimming is a lifelong sport. Swimmers can not only use their skills to save their own lives, but the lives of others. They can use their sport to find first jobs like lifeguarding as teens and go on to use the sport as a way to stay fit and healthy for life. And I could go on and on about the discipline and time management skills these students learn as swimmers. They are balancing demanding practice schedules with their school life. They are encouraged by their coaches to be very involved in the community, other extracurricular activities, and they fundraise for their clubs and school teams and more. I've learned so much being involved in this swimming community, traveling to countless towns in Connecticut and states outside of Connecticut, and I will tell you that good things are happening in communities that make swimming a priority. I encourage you to watch a swim meet, preferably our high school boys or girls, but really any, and I think you will agree with me. My son talked about swimming on the Guilford High School swim team from the minute this and the girls' team were board approved in 2015. I went to many parent meetings, and then I sat in this exact audience supporting that initiative. We were so excited that it would come together in time for his high school career. The high school swim experience is a different one than club swimming, and my son counted the days until it was his turn to represent his town in Guilford Green. He had followed Corey Gambardella as a team of one for Guilford, and then Corey and Aiden Henry, who's now one of his captains. And these boys you see here now, their coaches and their families have slowly worked to grow the Guilford High School boys team to 12 incredible swimmers. And you won't believe how many more we have coming up. We have 14 to 16 committed boys for the Guilford High School team next year already, and we hope many more beyond that. As you may or may not know, unfortunately, the Guilford boys team was taken away only a short time before the 2019-2020 season was to begin. Luckily, thanks to the coaches and parents who've worked tirelessly for these 12 boys, they were invited onto a co-op team, and they are currently in their first year of a 2-year co-op contract. They swim with North Haven, East Haven, and North Branford boys to form one team called Greater New Haven. The boys are required to practice in North Haven, which is almost a 30-minute car ride and sometimes longer on the bus. They travel 5 days a week to this pool to practice for their almost 3-month season. We don't receive any money for this bus transportation. So when the Guilford team was taken away, our families came together and we made the difficult decision to stay the course, even though that would mean paying out of pocket for round-trip bus transportation to and from North Haven each weekday, as well as home and away meets. There were families in our families who this has been a huge financial burden for, and we know there are some families whose children did not join or stay on the team because of the cost. We are trying to offset the cost with fundraising, but it's still significant. We don't want any of our current boys to leave the team next year due to these financial restrictions, and we are concerned that this may be a reality. Again, we are incredibly grateful that the boys had the opportunity to join this co-op team rather than have no team at all, and these boys have been amazing. They, especially our sophomores, juniors, and seniors who had that team taken away, have worked very hard to bond with their new teammates, get to know their new coach. They're open-minded about the changes, and I honestly don't think we have heard one complaint from any of them about the amount of traveling they have had to do. They are admittedly exhausted, especially this midterm week, but they are so grateful to swim. They are just doing it. But to say there have not been difficulties and inconveniences would be a lie, and the majority of the logistics are falling all on the parents. The boys are getting home much later from practice, and they're required to leave school much earlier than they would if their practices and home meets were down the street at the Soundview YMCA, like our Guilford High School standalone girls team is. They are spending their early dismissal days, including their midterm days like this week, at the North Haven Library due to the logistics of the buses, and they have to wait there until practice starts and study there. We would like them closer to home or at the Guilford Library for these long afternoons. We lost a coach when moving to the co-op team, so the boys have one coach for 26 kids. It's not ideal, and it's not manageable. The boys need 2 coaches, or at the very least, an assistant coach added next year. In previous years, not only did this coach position include coaching our boys, but it also included handling some of the basic logistics of the team. But right now, we as the parents are handling all of the logistics, all of the daily communication with the bus company. We arrange for all the last-minute changes, if a bus driver calls in sick, anything, and it really has just been very frustrating. The frustration's growing that over the hours the parents are needing to spend on communication, especially between the 4 towns, and having an additional coach would alleviate some of this burden for us. So why are we here tonight? We know we are in a binding 2-year contract with this co-op team, and we don't want to break this commitment for any of them. However, we're asking you, the board, to consider supporting these boys and the future of this team and Guilford High School swimming in 3 ways moving forward. 1, while we're still bound to this contract for 1 more year, consider adding a coaching position to this co-op team. 2, cover transportation costs to and from North Haven practices and our away meets, so we don't lose boys off of the team for financial reasons. And 3, help us to start the process to again become a standalone team like our girls' swim team. We have the numbers. We have now a practice pool agreement at the Branford Soundview YMCA, and we want these boys to come back home and represent Guilford, their hometown, for the 2021-2022 school year. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, members of the board. My name is Aiden Henry, and I'm a senior at Guilford High School. The capacity in which I'm speaking here today is as one of the captains of the Guilford High School swim team that is currently a part of the Greater New Haven Co-op with East Haven, North Branford, and North Haven. I've been a captain representing our town's swimmers for 2 years, and it's during this time that I've been a member of 2 different co-op teams. These teams were founded out of necessity due to previously insufficient numbers in order to be able to compete against the larger, more established teams of the state. I've been a resident of Guilford since the 5th grade, and throughout my years of living in this town, I've seen the rise of Guilford swimming. Many students of this town swim for the various local club swim teams in the state, and our town in particular has developed a reputation for producing some of the most formidable swimmers the state has ever seen. My freshman year, I had the privilege of being a teammate with Corey Gambardella, and I was a witness up close to the phenomenal season he had, in which he became a state champion in the 100-yard butterfly and set the state record, which stands to this day. His swimming abilities allowed him to compete in the 2016 Olympic trials and gave him the opportunity to swim at a Division I level at the University of Indiana. He and I represented and swam for at that time for the co-op team of Branford Guilford, and me and my fellow teammates last year were able to secure that program's first ever winning record and produce swimmers which swam at state finals and state opens. Unfortunately, this program dissolved because the town of Branford, which 100% funded the co-op, only had 1 participating swimmer, and the team was made up almost entirely of Guilford swimmers. We were fortunate enough to be taken to another co-op team, but the experience of being removed from a coaching staff which we had grown incredibly attached to and transitioning to a new, hard-to-travel-to program has been a difficult one. We now understand that our current situation will not last forever, and with Guilford swimmers again making up the majority of our current co-op team, we think it is time for our town to recognize the amount of talent and potential we as student athletes possess, and how we wish to be invested in and valued. I have been fortunate enough to live in and be educated in this town for 8 years, and it has provided me with incredible opportunities of being the lead in the most recent school play and to hold the office of senior student body class president. Out of all the achievements I've had in my high school career, I can say that I'm most proud that I was captain of my high school swim team for my junior and senior years. And it's through my position as captain and as a member of my team, I found the dedication and motivation necessary in the pool that has allowed me to continue my swimming and academic career at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Our town has a history of producing successful swimmers, both male and female, that are outstanding in both their academic and athletic abilities, that currently attend and will attend our nation's top schools and will proudly represent and still call this town home long after they have graduated. These swimmers from our town currently perform and have performed at the highest levels of this sport, and although they represent our town proudly, they are forced to do so indirectly. This town will continue to produce some of the finest swimmers in the state, and I'm positive that the underclassmen that I currently represent will follow in the footsteps of their alumni and will push their athletic and academic performance to its most maximum level possible. However, I can only see their performance being amplified when they do so under the banner of the town they live in, knowing that they have the full support of their school and the people who represent them. The creation of a Guilford boys swimming and diving team would be one of the greatest investments this town can make in its students. This town has the numbers, talent, and resources available to put itself in Connecticut high school championship conversations and develop a program that will continue to produce some of the finest student athletes to graduate from our high school. The sport of swimming has given me many things. It gave me friends when I first moved here, family when I joined and helped lead a team, and the opportunity to receive a higher education that otherwise would not be possible for me. I'm beyond thankful for my sport, and I'm beyond thankful to live in Guilford. But as I graduate this year, it is one of my biggest regrets that I was unable to swim solely for my town, that I was unable to perform for the glory of my school and its students. I believe it is my duty as captain to work to extend to my fellow teammates the privilege of being able to compete for their town, to give them the opportunity to show the world where they come from and what they do best, and to let them take pride in their abilities in the place they call home. The decision to make a Guilford boys swimming and diving team will enrich this town and its athletics. The boys I represent have the highest quality of character, integrity, and sportsmanship, and they deserve to directly represent this town and be ambassadors of what Guilford has to offer. These boys will make all of you proud, I guarantee it, and through the sport of swimming, they will be given opportunities to show the world as young men the talent and quality of character they have developed from living in this town. Taking ownership of these boys and giving them the opportunity to develop into the young men that the town of Guilford will be proud of can be one of the best moves this town can make. Thank you very much.
I have just one follow-up. Do you guys want to go still, or good? Thank you, guys. My name is John Mayo. I'm at 199 Village Pond Road in Guilford, and I have a unique situation where I have a daughter who's a senior on the swim team and a son who's an 8th grader who will be joining these guys next year. And I thought that I could lead a bit of perspective. It's really nice to see some extremely familiar faces in the crowd here tonight that have been here 5 years ago in the same room when we first started this process with you. And 2 words struck out, Dr. Freeman, in your early presentation, and it was thoughtful investment. That's your thoughtful investment right there. These guys. Aiden, wonderful speech. I can give you some perspective on the girls' team. When I was here in the fall, I did make a request to the board for an additional $6,000 to support the girls' team. I know that that was not put into the budget, and when you are eliminating 10 teaching positions, I understand the situation that you were put in. However, we have a problem with pay for play with a number of teams here as well. Crew, hockey, the new sailing team that you were very enthused about back in the fall. They came in saying that they would do things on their own dime, but essentially the parents will be paying for that. So that's pay for play. The girls' team is also pay for play. I can give you the numbers that we're ending up by. We'll be writing a check back to Mr. Jarvis for $8,047.74 coming up here at the end of the year. $5,100 of that is to pay for the pool at the YMCA. Our transportation is paid for by the parents. The meet officials, the people who call the races, is paid for by the parents. So I think after this thoughtful and awesome demonstration and presentation tonight by the boys team, that we really seriously need to start thinking about the different teams that are still pay for play. The only team that I can see in the budget that receives any funding is the hockey team, who gets $20,000 a year for ice time. I don't know all of their specifics. I do not know the money that they pay for transportation. I don't know how much ice time is, to be frank with you. But that is a line item that is in the budget and that's there every year. But we have other pay-for-play teams here that could use that line item added as well. For the boys' team to become fully funded, for the girls' team to continue to be fully funded as well. As Aiden said, the investment, the dedication that they put into this program is incredible. My daughter is a senior. She will be swimming next year at Colby College up in Maine. She wouldn't have had that opportunity if it was not for the Guilford swimming team and her club team. That opened a door for her to get into a prestigious institution that she may not have had. And she's an honor roll student. She's a great student. Scores are wonderful. Swimming opened the door for her. I'm proud of her. I'm proud of these guys. They put in the work. They really do. And we need to support this team moving forward. This may not be for this coming budget. If these guys are coming on the program from 2 years from now, you really need to consider putting it forward for that budget in the year after that. Thank you very much. And I have numbers if you want to look at numbers. Be glad to provide whatever you need me to provide for you guys. Glad to work with the boys team moving forward. As I mentioned, this has never been girls versus boys for me. It never has. And I hope you guys believe that too. I wanted this team to move forward. The girls team had the opportunity before the boys team did because of that co-op situation. But with my son moving forward, you're going to see more of us down the road as well. Thanks again, and have a great night.
Thank you. Please come up. I'm so sorry. Just one quick clarification, if you may, if you would. The boys' team our understanding is that the boys team was not taken away, that because of numbers, it couldn't, we do have a minimal number of athletes that need to be on a team for the school to be able to support it. Could you just give us a quick clarifying?
Sure. The loss of the team was a result of Branford dropping out of our cooperative agreement with Branford. We had previously been in a co-op arrangement with Branford. When they lost numbers and pulled out, Mr. Jarvis was able to find us a co-op in the Greater New Haven. It was the loss of the team was not initiated at the Guilford schools level, and it was a last-minute adjustment to find an opportunity with another co-op team.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry I didn't
That's
keep
okay.
you waiting.
My name is Bob Gould. I live at 5 Spinning Mill Court in Guilford. I've been living here since 2012. I've got 4 kids in 3 different schools. Next year I'll have 4 kids in 4 different schools. My oldest is Joey Gould over here with the long hair, and he has been swimming since I think he was 7, although we taught him to swim when he was just an infant. I don't have all of the numbers and the specifics that you've heard about tonight. I'm coming more to speak to you a little bit about something that I was involved in a conversation. I've been going to all of the meets at North Haven. They're pretty close to my office, and it's really convenient to go during the day. As soon as our boys joined that team started winning. And those parents got really excited. And every week I go to these meets, and the parents can't talk about how awesome it is to have the Guilford guys swimming with them because they have respect again. They're respected. They're beating teams that they haven't beaten in years. They're coming close to beating teams that they were always blown out by. And that's because of these guys and so many more that aren't here. We bring a level of credibility to that swim team that is not there without Guilford. And it was a little embarrassing for me because we don't have a team. Because these guys are talking about how awesome Guilford swimmers are, and at the same time, they're not swimming necessarily for Guilford. We're part of the Greater New Haven swim team. It's a conglomerate of all sorts of towns. These guys are good. We have so many great swimmers coming up. We have a reputation that's been developed because of Aiden and some of these older swimmers. And the younger guys coming up, we have an opportunity here. And these kids love it. It's great for their mental health. It's great for their sense of responsibility, and it's great for their level of pride. When they say they swim for Guilford, they can say it with pride. And these other teams, they know what's coming. I don't know how you find the money. I really don't. Well, I don't know what we need, maybe 20 grand. It's a big budget. You have hard decisions to make. We're not looking for that much here. We're just trying to develop a program to help these kids and so many more that are coming. So find the money. We don't need to nickel and dime on everything. Take a look around, see what you can find, help us out, because we are getting real sick of passing the hat around to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to switch gears a little bit.
Dear members of the Board of Education, my name is Megan Mariano, and I'm a 3rd grader at Calvin Lee. This is my brother Matthew. He is in 1st grade. My brother and I love art. This year...
Don't move that, please. Just leave it where it was. Like that. The other one is the public one.
Nobody can hear.
This year, my brother has art on Mondays. Because of the national holidays, he misses 9 classes. This makes him so sad. We love art because we have fun drawing, painting, and crafting. We like to use our imaginations. Art helps me learn different materials and how to use them correctly. We also learn to problem solve doing art. I especially love art because I like to draw and I am happy when I am drawing. Art helps me learn about shapes, positive and negative space, and monochromatic colors. I love art because I love to be creative and have fun with painting, crafting, and using my imagination. We hope that you will consider offering more art classes and chances for us to do art because we love it so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
This one? My name is Doug Rollins. I live on 360 Old Sachem's Head Road, and I was told to never follow children. I'm going to do it anyway. I've lived here just 3 years, so I'm new to the town, and I have to say I am so tremendously impressed with the parents and the administration, the teachers of the system. It's no mistake. We've just been named this Blue Ribbon High School Award. It's a phenomenal place. We all should be very proud of what these people are doing for us and what our teachers are doing for our kids, so thank you guys. But I'll have to tell you, I think the only reason we're so great is because of music. That didn't swim over? Okay. Okay, so maybe it's not the only reason, but it's very important to me. In fact, it's one of the main reasons we moved here. In fact, I have the chance to work with families in my job and people from other towns. If they're thinking of moving, I tell them to move here. So I've added 1 to your numbers, and I'd like to add more. And I think music's a huge part of it. People have talked tonight about what athletics, swimming in particular, does for their kids, and I can tell you that I've read studies that have supported very strongly that music is a tremendously important thing for our kids. Journal of Educational Psychology, probably one of your favorite journals, Dr. Freeman. It was a study back in June that looked at 15,000 kids from British Columbia, looked at their school records and their level of music involvement. And they found a correlation, not a causation, we know, but they found that these kids that were heavily involved in music were on average a grade level above their counterparts. The kids who were lightly involved in music were 4 to 8 points greater on end-of-year test scores. So music is tremendously important. I love sports too. In fact, I support 2 pay-for-play sports, so I understand what you guys are going through. And sports are very important as well. But to me, music is a huge advantage to my kid for her future life. We know that sports are probably 50% participation rate in this town. Music is almost 50%, which is one of the highest in the state. We know our Music Boosters Board is very supportive of the teachers. I'm a member of that board. And in my personal opinion, I think we need to support that as much as we can. I know there's very little room for you guys to work money in and out of this. It's a very tight budget. I actually read it. It's the most reading I've done since my board exams, and it was thoroughly impressive. But while I realize there's very little to give, I just want to make sure we all know that supporting the system, the music system, imperative is to support the instruments as they decay and fall apart. If you look in this room right behind you or right in front of you, you'll see 2 very, very old pianos. I'm sure they're doing their best, but those are probably near the end of their lives. We at the Music Boosters Board talk a lot about how we can help the music department keep instruments alive and well. There is a family rental fee that many parents pay to help defray the cost of this, but it's not enough. And if we just could ask you to consider that in your budget to keep our instruments healthy and happy so that our kids can stay healthy and happy and stay smart and a year ahead of everybody else. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rebecca Chung. I have 2 children, one currently a kindergartner at A.W. Cox and a 5th grader at Baldwin Middle School. As you know, our town has shown a strong support of increasing art in our elementary schools. Many have spoken at last year's budget meetings, and those who aren't able to have sent numerous emails to the board. We have also been gaining tremendous support in a closed Facebook parents group, Guilford Elementary Art Advocates Online. My 5th grader spoke last year, sweaty and nervous, immediately following his basketball evaluation, knowing full well his speech would not impact his school year, but for the future, the next school year for all the little kids like his little brother in the Guilford elementary schools. I have also spoken about my own personal experiences volunteering in the art room and how 30 to 40 minutes is simply not enough. By the time the project is demonstrated, materials are set up and cleaned up, the children only get 20 minutes of actual hands-on time. I was thrilled to see that last year the $10,000 for Artists in Residence program was utilized this year with lots of positive feedback. However, I still think that this investment Artist Residence program is not the same thing as hands-on instruction time. I also brought an example of the mandalas the children worked on with the Artists in Residence at Cox. My kindergartner was so proud and happy to share it coming home from school. As you can see, it's made with markers and stickers. Is this reflective of a $10,000 investment? I would like to see any future investment to be a more mindful use, as Dr. Freeman said, a thoughtful investment of funds to allow challenging projects that would allow the children to use mediums beyond markers and stickers, something they would not have the time to use in that once a week 30 to 40 minute block for art they currently get. My kindergarten refers to art as a special time. I'm curious, why does my child refer to art, a subject along with everything else he enjoys, a special time? Is it because to him and his peers, it is something he looks forward to only once a week? He often stresses if he misses Friday, he will not get his art time. I ask you please to consider our request for full-time art teachers in the elementary schools in the upcoming budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also wanted to add, this has nothing to do with art, but I was really moved by the swim team's speeches. It was incredible, and I hope that you consider that for the future too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jason Gilmore. I'm a parent of a third grader and a kindergartner at Cox. And I'm also speaking on behalf of art for the kids. I am a little biased. I'm an art teacher that I work up in Hartford. And I also have done in the past, I've been a muralist. I've been a artist in residence in schools. They've done a very similar thing, where I would go in and I would work with 3-4 classrooms at a time, and for 8 weeks. And by the end of the 8-week period, they would have a mural that's on their school now. It never cost $10,000. Of course, that was only 4 classes, right? But I mean, the end product is something that the kids and the school together are very proud of. But the difference between an art teacher and an artist in residence is the main difference between any person in any kid's adult in their lives and somebody that they know very well. It's relationships. You cannot, if a child's there, it's great when a child knows how to draw, they feel comfortable with paint, they feel comfortable creating with whatever. And that's more or less usually the case when they're younger. And as they grow older, they start to get a little more timid, and they get more conscious about what they can and can't produce. Artists in residence cannot, there's no way that they can make the same kind of relationship with a child that I can if I start with them in August and finish with them in June. By the end of the class in June, they will have, I'll get to know them, I'll get to know what they like, I'll get to know what they're good at and what they have challenges with. And together, we'll be able to go out with that knowledge. I will be able to help them grow, help them see patterns, help them see, like the child said, positive and negative shapes, and start to learn how to see a world a little differently. Artisans in residencies are good as enrichment, something extra, that's great, but not as a replacement. I saw in the budget there's a makerspace there's a big budget for that. I taught a makerspace. I tried to build a makerspace. It takes not just money, it takes time. It takes time to, let's just say that you build this space over the summer, right? You have all the materials that people suggest. Well, how are you going to give training to teachers on how to use it, or just let them go in and add that to their plate? There has to be an actual plan to implement, and the implementation of such a room would take 3 to 5 years to get going really effectively. Why not use the money to shore up what you have? Put the money in, invest the money wisely in the person that has the relationships with the children now. Expand it. I had last year, I taught for, the way we had it set up is I had my group of children for 2 days per week, and another group of children for 3 days during the same week. And then they would flip-flop. When I had the kids for 3 days, it was better. When I had them only for 2 and they missed a day during that week, it was like we had never done anything when they came back. Can you imagine having a math class where once a week, twice a week, they would forget. It's skill building, it's relationship building, it's comfort. They have to have, it's a practice. It's a practice like any other, like sport. If they don't do it regularly, they won't feel comfortable with it. And if they don't feel comfortable with it, they won't feel comfortable with expressing themselves. And if they don't feel comfortable with expressing themselves, then, everything else kind of is tenuous. So in order to strengthen them as lifelong learners, they really need to build relationships with the people that are giving them skills that may not come around from their parents or even their academic teachers. So do consider, just make what you have now very much worthwhile to the children that they're serving now. And try not to expand yourself too thin on new things, because they take a lot of money, they take a lot of time, they take a lot of investment. And let's just make sure we are doing what we can with what we have that works. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Alison Puccio, and I'm actually here tonight on behalf of 66 families from Calvin Leet School. Some of us are here tonight, and we are here to strongly support the provision within Dr. Freeman's budget for a full-time position for our music teacher, Mr. Nick Abraham. Currently, Mr. Abraham is a .8 employee. We believe that expanding his position will enable him to collaborate more often with classroom teachers, to work in depth with individual students and small groups, to support the Choose Love initiative, and to continue to develop a music wellness intervention strategy. Mr. Abraham has led the music program at Calvin Leet since it was expanded almost 2 years ago. He uses every single minute available to enrich our children's musical knowledge, appreciation, and enjoyment. Each day, you will hear lots of sounds coming from Mr. Abraham's classroom. Some of it is music, but all of it is joy. We are so grateful that he is a part of our school community, and thank our principal, Mrs. Kenesha Slowly, for advocating on his behalf to the superintendent and to the Board of Ed. We hope that you will recognize the work that he's already put into his position and allow him to continue to build his program by making him a full-time employee. And I would just like to say one other thing, and I'm only speaking for myself now, not our wonderful families, although I know that many of them would agree. But when we're talking about moving employees from .8 to full-time, I would love to see the board also consider moving our librarian, Mrs. Cheryl Monaco, from a .8 employee to a full-time position. Our library right now is a full-time resource for our staff and for our students, and I think that our librarian should be a full-time resource as well. And I am particularly interested in building these maker spaces and what that looks like for her and for her schedule. And I think that if we are asking her to take on potentially the administration of the project or to help build out She's already looked into professional development programs that could potentially assist us with building that out at LEAT. I think if we're putting something else onto her plate, we need to recognize that it's already full. So I would love to see the board add in that .2 position for her as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Catherine Adams. I live at 250 Drumara Road. I am an art teacher at Choate Rosemary Hall. I'm there part-time, mainly because they have, I think 8 art teachers for their high school. It's visual arts, theater arts, and then some. But I'm here just talking about visual arts this evening. So what struck me a little bit when we were thinking about being culturally and globally aware, and that's an initiative we have for our town and our schools, we have to consider how art is culture. If we do not have culture, we don't have art, we don't have culture, they work hand in hand. So how do we define ourselves culturally cannot go unserved or unfed, and that goes for the music program. It does go for athletics because moving our body is very important too, and not everyone does it through music. Some people do it through water. So I totally support the swim team as well. Blown away by what they're doing and thinking about equity. Visual arts is vast and encompassing. Art is a language. I don't speak very well because I make art, and that's really my first primary language. So bear with me, please. Art is communication. We communicate with the way we perceive things, how we take things in, and how we make them our own, and how we put them forth for others to see. It's very important for the students who communicate through art to be seen. And when we're not seeing these students, when they don't have the vehicle for that, we are not serving them. And they're silenced by that. And that's devastating to be a silenced student when the community hears and tries to hear all of us. It's a beautiful thing. We're a really incredible community, and I know we have the ability to make sure all students feel inclusive. Art is critical assessment, so STEM is STEAM, and we need to stop saying STEAM or STEM. We really need to say STEAM. We really do. STEM is just part of the box. Art is a bucket of skills. And through these skills, through these techniques and materials, our bucket grows stronger and can spill forth. Art is visual literacy. If we want to be literate, we have to include the visual capacity of literacy into that understanding of what literacy is. So when you look at a painting, what are you seeing? You're not just looking at the composition or just the material or just the artist's understanding. You're also looking at your own personal history and your experience, and you're healing yourself. When you're seeing that person communicating, they're talking to you and they're presenting themselves as well. That's a beautiful thing. Art is mindful practice. Through practice, we become confident. So through art, we build our confidence. Art is the glue that merges and adheres all areas of the brain and cements the hand-brain connection. We need that to form in our early years, and we need that to carry through. Our students need to feel confidence. They need to feel brave. They need to be able to take risks. They need to be able to have failure, and these things happen in the art room. So when we support arts, we bring forth learning. So I hopefully we can do that and continue to do that and do that at a higher level as we go forth. Thank you.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. Nate Jacobson, 1470 Long Hill Road, parent of 4 children in 4 schools this current year. I think I have mainly questions more than comment. I don't know if you'll, maybe Dr. Freeman's the best person that may be able to answer some of this. Pupil Services Department question. Do you know if there's any allocations for increased reading programs, specifically reading programs for students with disabilities?
Dr. Valspace, that's a long answer. I can talk about that maybe tomorrow if there's more time. I don't know if you want to wait until the end and field questions. It's up to you. I can.
I mean, is there a minute answer that can hold over? I don't want, no, I mean, if he's here tonight, I don't want to wait till tomorrow night to answer your question.
So the answer is are there new monies in this budget for no. Are we looking at how we address reading instruction in basic classroom level as well as supports with students who have individual needs in reading? Yes. And so Dr. Crystal and Mr. Scanziano and I have been looking at reading instruction across the spectrum, including more phonics instruction in the mainstream classroom at the younger grades and using some of our support personnel in different ways to meet individual needs.
Okay, with that, my question is very, very pointed. I've discovered over the course of the last year that many more, 1 in 5 students is dyslexic. They're being diagnosed more and more. To be blunt, Guilford's lack of having universal screenings over the previous 10 years when they were recommended by the state. By the way, I'm an educator, former administrator, so I know a lot of this well. Guilford had an assistant superintendent that did not believe in universal screens. I had conversations and emails where she said it point blank. That failure in the past has put Guilford in a position where my estimate is that they're 10 years behind a lot of other districts in reading instruction. So one of the things that Guilford is grossly inadequately trained in is teachers who have a Wilson or an Orton-Gillian certification to teach students with disabilities that are not reading at grade level. So I would strongly advocate for the board to ask more questions. Dr. Freeman, Dr. Scanziano, I assume, have had some conversations on this already. I guess I'm desiring to bring the board up to speed. I'm a little shocked that it wasn't a priority in this budget, seeing that Dr. Scanziano and I have had, I guess we could call it a conversation. I don't know if he would call it that. How grossly inadequate Guilford currently is. I feel badly putting these accusations out there right now, so if anybody wants to talk with me, if Dr. Freeman, if Mr. Scanziano want to talk, by all means contact me.
So this is a public hearing and not the place to get into a back and forth conversation, but for the record, I just want to note that I would disagree with almost everything that was just shared here, but want to again reiterate that we're working at changing the way that we deliver and support reading instruction. I disagree with the characterization of Dr. Keene. I disagree with the fact that we're 10 years behind other districts, and I would disagree with the use of the language grossly inadequate. All of that said, Nate, you know I'm happy to have a conversation with you.
Sure. Fair enough. It's been brought to people's attention, and that's what I was looking to do. Second one, in my undergraduate and graduate days, I often came across documents from other school districts related to specifically when athletic teams are added, when townspeople are petitioning, similar to what's been done previous 5 years and now. Does Guilford currently have a guideline as to, in terms of what number of students to support a sport, how long it's in the JV status or the club status before it gets brought up to varsity, and essentially before it's fully funded? I remember a document from 2007. I believe it was created by Chip Dorman. I mean, a really well put together packet of I don't think it was policy. It was probably more regulation that detailed all that. Do you know if that's still in existence, if it's dusted off? If it's
the athletic director certainly monitors, all the teams in the district, money that is spent on teams, et cetera. As you can imagine, so we've heard over the last 4 or 5 years interest in a swimming team. We had a group that came this past fall with an interest in a sailing team. We are unable to regularly or programmatically put into a budget an expectation that we will automatically increase resources per any per any given request. So what I can tell you, and certainly Dr. Freeman, step in if you want, that it is something that the athletic director is looking at yearly. It is something that we as a Board of Ed, within the last couple of years, have certainly talked about in terms of trying to understand how funding is spent across athletic teams in the district. We recognize that some are still at a club status, and we are, as you can tell tonight, hearing from interested parents about other teams that folks have an interest in.
I'm wondering if that old document still exists, if it was...
That I don't know the answer to.
The document may exist, but we haven't been following such. Again, to Dr. Balistraci's point, there isn't a formula that says with 100 signatures and 2 years as a club, you automatically secure varsity funding. Those are individual budget decisions that this board makes individually. And you've heard people here tonight say that 6 years ago you offered us partial funding and we'd like to be increased to full funding. And we've got a number of teams that are in unique constructs.
Right.
Swimming, crew, ice hockey, fencing. So no, we're not following a formula like that.
I guess my question is, as equity comes up, and I'm assuming that when you said we're looking at how the athletics is structured, the finances on it, anybody since 1970 whatever in Title IX knows that that's critical. And it's not only a gender equity issue. So just as I'm hearing people advocate for their programs, I can't help but think if there was something more concrete, it wouldn't be as ambiguous or, yeah, I want to do this or this, and it wouldn't be as dependent on one person's decision. I mean, part of me, I've been to these meetings for several years now, and it almost seems like we're spinning our wheels on the subject. When this was discussed three years ago, several board members have changed. Some were still here, but it almost became, I sensed the contentiousness amongst the board on that equity issue of some students are able to play a sport because it's a traditional long time sport without having anything come out of their pocket, and some other untraditional sports are anteing up. And I'm assuming that it's probably still a divided board on that issue with just public school funds and who has to ante up and who doesn't. So maybe that's a possible solution. Obviously, it's not going to be solved in this budget season, but I would suggest rather than kicking the can down the road, considering that, so we're not treading our wheels, and I'm not back here 5 years ago listening to the same things of programs advocating for money.
I will simply say, what I'm going to do is interpret your request as a request for us to consider parental input or community input on sports teams that have come to us tonight, and we will certainly do that.
I guess
please
also,
let me finish.
Yep, I will.
I've been on the board for 8 years, so I would also say you're mischaracterizing the contention that has not existed. I think we have had well-intentioned, meaningful conversations about this issue. I could spend time talking about this. This is a night for the community, so I won't go on. We would love to fund teams across the board. We have limited resources, so we are constantly having to evaluate
I get that,
resources.
I appreciate that.
So we hear people's interests. We think it is fabulous that the boys swim team is doing so successfully, and we will do our best to take in all the requests and see what we can do now or think about it in the fuure.
Thank you. It's more the equity of it than how well
I hear you.
team's doing.
But it's.
I guess my third question. Is it Lee School who's looking at additional music resources? Excuse me, in the point.
Oh, yes, sorry, from .8 to
My
1.
draft includes an increase of
.8, yes,
.2 FTEs
.8
at
to
least.
1, yes.
Speaking of equity in that, just popped in my mind, are all the other schools full-time?
It depends on some of those decisions are based on the enrollment of every given school. Our four elementary schools do not have the
Are
same
you
level
familiar
of
with
enrollment.
what school's full-time, what
I don't.
what school is not?
I can't say, but are you asking for?
I mean, I'm concerned with inequity across the board. So when you have one school that's petitioning an additional 2/10 music, the first thing that comes to my head is, are the other schools getting that as well? Just consistency of whether my student is a Calvin Leet student, a Melissa Jones student, consistency across the board. So it just jumped at me like, all right, so they're adding music instruction for special ed students at Calvin Leet. Do special ed students at Melissa Jones, should they have the same experience? At Lake, should they have the same experience? Cox, should they have the same experience?
So, Dr. Balstraci, FTEs are assigned first by enrollment and the ability for individuals to cover classes.
Right.
Beyond that, at times, when we see a promising practice that is evolving in one school, we may support that practice because there's an opportunity to do so, or because we want to see if that becomes a practice that could extend further. At times, there are students or student populations that may fall in individual neighborhood schools or grade level schools that are different qualitatively or quantitatively than they are in different locations. So the FTEs are assigned based on need either by enrollment and the ability to cover classes, need because of an opportunity to pilot a new experience, or need because even when you count the numbers, sometimes the needs of students in different locations or different grade level cohorts differ from those in other schools. The increase this year that is happening at Leet is an increase that was proposed by Principal Slowly, that was supported by me. After it was presented publicly, I have heard support for it voiced from the Leet community, and they have personalized it to Mr. Abraham, who's in that position and happens to be doing a very good job. But that position was not lobbied by a school community, was not done for an individual person. It's done because we see an opportunity to look at how he can cover his classes and meet the needs of a special education population there. The other elementary schools, off the top of my head, I believe are at full-time music, but I would have to check that. I know that when you look at PE, music, and media center staffing, some of the schools have a 1.0, others have a 0.8, and all of those would be recognized as meeting the needs of the students enrolled. They may not all meet a 1.0 FTE equivalent of a full-time position.
We have neighborhood schools, as you know, for our 4 elementary schools, and every neighborhood is not the same amount of people. We don't change to make each school have the same amount of students in it and keep changing it around. So, you know, Calvin Leet might have 3 sections in kindergarten. A.W. Cox might have 2 sections of kindergarten.
Correct.
You know, Lakes might have 3 or 4.
I
So
understand
we're not,
that.
you know, we're working.
I guess I'm looking for the inequity of experiences. It sounds like it's an amazing pilot opportunity for those students to get that music. I guess my question is there a long-term vision in terms of if that pilot is successful, is this going to be extended into the other elementary schools?
We can't promise anything. We don't know what the resources are next year, but certainly the idea of a pilot is to learn from that, and if it is a positive experience, do what we can.
And while very intentionally veiling my answer, it also will have to do with the individual students and population of students at that setting. What is appropriate for one school because of individual needs or clusters of needs may not be appropriate or necessary in other schools. Not every pilot becomes something that we do in other settings. So I'm giving you a number of reasons for why we might be moving to increase that FTE. I am intentionally not telling you that this is a general education pilot or a pilot for all special education students, and that I will publicly be sharing data and an evaluation and letting you know whether we roll that forward next year or not.
Equity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other people who would like to?
May I just come up for a few questions regarding what he just said?
So regarding his comments on equity, Dr. Freeman, you said that it was based on enrollment, and I just want to speak from Cox. I was looking at the enrollment in your budget printout, and we have nearly the exact same number as LEAT, and I'm aware we do have full-time music. So we have 252, and LEAT has, I think, 250. So we are similarly enrolled as far as enrollment. And I did have a question about, in the budget, there was something about a Cox light on the site improvements. Change the curb and the bus loop to allow bus to turn right. I was just curious because I do the communications at Cox and I have yet to see any parent feedback regarding that. And it's $20,000. So where the curb, what area are you talking about?
I'm going to apologize. I'm going to need to confer with Mr. Gurnham before I can answer that in any kind of credible detail.
I've read the entire thing and it's just very vague and it's never come up with other Cox families in the community. Nobody has any idea. And it's kind of a large sum. You know, it's comparable to the investment in art we're talking about, $20,000.
So without knowing the specifics of that particular item, I will mention that there are often going to be site improvement pieces that are embedded in the budget that aren't necessarily there because of a call from the community to have that change. There are lots of things that may be changed because of traffic flow, because of considerations that the police have asked us to look into. I know that we have studied all of the exits and entrances, trying to make them all work faster to improve bus efficiency. That's been a project for about the past 3 years.
That was just concerning to me because if there was an issue that I was not completely aware all this time at Cox, you know, there was something, a safety issue regarding traffic. Also, I wanted to talk about the allocation for lakes, the flexible seating that you had mentioned in your presentation. Is that something that's being considered at all the other schools too, or is it just, like you said, based on the needs per school?
So that's actually a really good example of how good ideas can roll out. That was initially funded through the Guilford Fund for Education. It was a grant that was written by one specific teacher at Lakes. She wrote the grant. She requested that GFFE fill her classroom with different levels of various seating. So there were standing desks, there were floor level rockers, there was all kinds of different opportunities. I believe that furniture's been in that classroom for 2 or 3 years. This year we're rolling out additional levels of that furniture, not complete classroom makeovers as that classroom had, but options to essentially most or all of the other classrooms at Lakes. Yes, if we continue to see positive results from that, we anticipate that that will be an expenditure that the board should anticipate seeing at other schools. The way this change works is that the Guilford Fund for Education can take one classroom and give it a makeover. It may take us 4 or 5 years to slowly begin infusing furniture choices and options into the classrooms. So it's growing from one classroom through Lakes, and we do anticipate that you'll see it continue to grow through the elementary level district-wide.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thanks.
Are there other people interested in addressing the board on new topics, other topics you've heard? Anybody?
We're going to be here tomorrow, too.
Anybody else? All right, so I want to thank everyone for coming out. I especially want to thank people who provide us with input. I will say that 12 months a year we're making decisions to try to make this the best school system for our students and our community. So we are always interested in hearing your input and feedback, but especially appreciate you coming out tonight. We will be here again tomorrow night, Tuesday, January 28th at 7:30 in this room at Adams for parents who can't make it tonight or are interested in coming back. We expect to be, as a board, voting on this proposed budget next Monday at a special meeting at Guilford High School in the library. We do, as a Board of Education, have the opportunity to accept the proposed budget as it has been put in front of us, to add to it or take away from it. And we do that very carefully and very thoughtfully. But certainly it helps to hear from the public. So thank you for coming.
Do you know when it gets kicked up to finance and when those public hearings we have?
We are very lucky to have in our audience
I have those
Because we love to talk at those
February
meetings.
13th.
chairman of the Board of Finance, but we also have it in front of us.
The 13th.
The 13th.
13th?
There we go. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for coming. And we, again, appreciate your input. Is there a motion to close?